Mr. Jones, can you tell me how you got here? Why did you decide to move out to the frontier? Well, like most of my education, I was having a hard time providing for my family back in Pennsylvania. The hours at the factory were long, and my boss was rough. My wife was forced to find a job in a clothing factory just to provide for our two kids. So one night, after an especially hard day at work for both of us, we discussed the idea of moving west and starting over again. We knew it was dangerous, but then again, so was working at the factory. We really felt like we didn't have much to lose, so we set out west in hopes of a new beginning. I knew we would probably not strike it rich, but the lure was still there. Well, we reached Colorado and we ran out of money, so we shut things down and I started looking for a job. The railroad company was just starting to reach the northern border of Colorado, and they were looking for workers. So my family rented a shack close to the route of the railroad, and I got a job laying track. So that's how we ended up here on the northern border of Colorado. Sounds like a humble start. Tell us how you got to where you are today. Well, I'm still nowhere near where I'd hoped and dreamed I might be by moving out west, but I have climbed the ladder a little with the railroad company. So, after the section of track I was working on was finished, the railroad company asked me if I wanted to keep working for them. And obviously, since I had no real chance of being hired on to work on a ranch, since I had no experience, I accepted the offer. From there, I had two choices. I could either move with the railroad and continue to lay track, or I could work as a brakeman on one of the existing trains they had. So I discussed it with my wife for a long time, and it was a hard decision. Being a brakeman is obviously a very dangerous job, and I wanted to avoid it if possible, but the thought of uprooting again to move with the train track was not a pleasant one. We had already made some friends and started going to a local Sunday school led by one of the ranchers, also saving up to buy a larger house to fit us better, and there were several plots of land nearby that we were looking at. So, in the end, the comfort of staying put outweighed the danger of being a brakeman, and I accepted the job. Let me interrupt here. Could you tell us about your time as a brakeman? I'm sure I'm fascinated by some of the stories you have. Very interesting job as long as you aren't the one doing it. During the summer, it isn't so bad, but when we get snowstorms, as we often do up here in Colorado, the danger at least doubles, if not triples. So, the main danger during the summers is falling off. They've tried to cut away any and all areas where there might be objects jutting out over the train, but sometimes we have to stop in an area where we normally wouldn't stop because of wild animals crossing the track, and in these cases we have to risk going out in less familiar areas. Some of the areas have mountainsides next to the track, and we could easily get hit by an overhanging rock. So we have to learn to react with the movement of the train, how to get from one car to the next quickly. Speed is essential in our job. And during the winter, this all becomes harder because of the potential of one of the cars, and my footing slipped. One of my buddies was able to climb down a little and help me get back over the platform, but it was pretty crazy. Getting back to your advancement in the railroad industry, how long did you work as a brakeman? Yeah, I worked for close to 5 years as a brakeman, and during this time we were finally able to buy a little cabin on another rancher's land. And he let us live on part of the ranch as long as we were willing to help him during the cattle drives. He had us take care of the place while he and his ranchers were out. So we had a place to live without paying rent, and our kids were growing up on a ranch and learning how to run one. And I'd still avoided any major accidents as a brakeman. So at my 5-year anniversary as a brakeman, my boss told me he had put in a word to the company about my excellent record and work ethic. And he said that they had me in mind to become a driver on one of the new trains. I would run the route from the station in my town to another town further west, about 50 miles away. So after a couple of months of waiting, they came down for an interview with me, and I was given the position a little bit later. So now I'm a train driver. Well, good for you. So for our readers back east, how are things different out here on the frontier? Yeah, so I would say the main difference is that everything is newer. Everything has been built in the last 50 years or so. We've pushed the natives out and set up modern facilities. Like the Sunday school we go to is only a couple of years old, and obviously the train tracks are pretty new. It's just a different environment back east where everything is at least a century old. Also, the climate is different. Colorado has more mountains, but other people out here on the frontier deal with tornadoes and sandstorms. Have you had any encounters with Indians? Actually, no. Once the railroad came through and more people started moving here, the natives have all stayed away for the most part. They don't want to be near an area like this where all the wildlife has been scared off because they live off of the land. So when we come in and transform the landscape like this, they have no way of getting food. That's why I think they should live on a reservation, then they wouldn't have to worry about having the uncivilized land to hunt in, and then they could have food already for them. Fascinating. One last question. Do you regret moving out west? No, I don't. I think the experience has made me and my family stronger. We have learned how to cope with what the frontier gives us, and we've been a part of the birth of a town. I'm excited to see what this area might be in 20 years or so once the railroad is finally completed and it's established. Sure, it would have been easy to stay back east, but my time out here has taught me lessons in hard work and resourcefulness, and I don't know if I would have learned all that working in a factory back home. Thank you so much for your time. Best of luck to you.